Hey everybody, with us once again is Mark Collinsworth, the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer of Vere Global Wealth Management, and he is here to talk about Bidenomics, which is still being pushed by the president, saying that it is working out, things are looking up, the economy is getting more positive. Mark, we've been talking about this for the past year now about Bidenomics and how they keep touting that. Is it making a turn? Is it getting a more positive effect now, as the President of the United States insists?
Hey, Larry, and thank you very much. I'm going to say absolutely not, because if it was, why are they trying to tout it so much on trying to force it down voters' throats that it's doing so great? Even to the point to where they want to stop calling it Bidenomics because they don't want Biden's name associated with the state of the current economy. I mean, think about that. That's a pretty big thing. His policies are so bad they don't want it associated with Bidenomics to be a name because it's such a terrible disaster. And the big thing is, go to the grocery store. I go to the grocery store and buy the exact same things I did 4 or 5 years ago, but I'm paying an extra $45 to $50 for the exact same things I used to buy 4 years ago under Trump.
Well, the president says that Bidenomics is working. It's just that people don't realize it. So that's why he's explaining it to them.
Well, that goes back to the old saying, Larry, don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining. He's trying the exact same tactic right there. It's all brainwashing. Like Adolf Hitler once said, if you tell the people the lie enough times, eventually they'll believe it. And that's exactly what Joe Biden's trying to do.
But yet, Mark, Wall Street had a good week, except for the closing on Friday. It was down a little bit, but for the whole rest of the week, it was record highs, wasn't it?
That's correct. And a lot of that's actually due to there's a lot of anticipation that the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates here in the next few months. Not cutting interest rates because the economy is doing poorly. That's the big question. The Federal Reserve has never cut interest rates while the economy has been creating jobs. They've only cut interest rates when the economy was losing jobs. So you have to ask the question, why are they cutting rates this time? My belief is they're cutting rates because they know Joe Biden's economy is in such bad shape. They're going to try to cut rates to give it some kind of boost between now and the election.
Will it work between now and November? Is it possible that things will actually start looking up and the voters will feel the upswing?
I don't think so, because if the Federal Reserve, and this is one of the reasons why gold has been doing fairly well here recently, is because they cut the interest rates now before inflation has got to its target. The Fed's targeting a 2% inflation rate. We're actually running around 3.6, 3.7. If they cut interest rates now before they get to their target rate, it'll be near impossible to get to 2%, because they're essentially going to lock in a certain percentage of that 3.6 that won't go away anytime soon.
All right, come November, let's say Trump regains the White House. What happens to the economy then? Can he fix these bad trends that are occurring now?
Think the first thing he's going to do is he's probably going to fire Janet Yellen and Jerome Powell, the U.S. Treasury Secretary and the Federal Reserve Chairman, because he knows what they did to him when he was in office, and they won't have a job. Another reason they're trying to save Biden's economy through cutting interest rates. But I think if Donald Trump comes in, he's probably going to have a Republican Senate and a Republican House of Representatives, and it would not surprise me if you saw another tax cut package come in that actually deals with inflation to some degree.
And with the tax cuts, what does that do for the average consumer?
Well, it gives them more spending power, but I think the key here is trying to offset some of the inflationary pressures. I know back under George Bush, one of the things they did for 2 years is they actually eliminated, or should I eliminate? If you had like sales tax when you went grocery shopping, they actually eliminated or gave you a break for whatever state you lived in. You actually got a break on your income taxes due to the sales tax of that state.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but when during Trump's first term, the tax cuts were for corporations, were they not for business?
That is correct. A lot of the tax breaks actually were geared toward corporations, but what that essentially did is when those tax breaks hit the corporations, what that essentially did was allow corporations to slightly lower the prices on their products because they were getting more profit from the taxes, and it also allowed them to go out and hire more people to create jobs because they had that additional money to hire people that they probably would not have hired without those tax cuts.
Well, we've discussed before that even if Trump gets in a second time, he's still not meeting a massive resistance from the quote deep state, people that are entrenched in the Washington power structure. So they'll probably be bucking him all the way. So can he really turn things around, including the economy?
I'm probably going to say no, he probably won't be able to turn things around. But what he will be able to do, and I think this is what your deep state is so worried about, is he will expose them to such a large degree that they will lose so much power over the next, 10 or 15 years that they have to shut him down just simply to prevent him from calling them out.
So what do you mean they have to shut him down?
Shut him down as where he will have very limited power on what he can do.
So therefore, he won't be able to accomplish much.
I don't think he will.
So things will not change under a second Trump administration.
Well, the only thing I think will actually change is that he will open people's eyes a lot more to how the government's actually run, which could have an effect down the road with how people vote for future presidents or future senators or congresspeople.
All right, but immediately then, or at least for the next 4 years, try as he may, it is going to have a limited effect on turning things around.
That is correct.
So, well, that doesn't sound too optimistic, Mark. It doesn't sound too positive for the country.
Well, the only good thing about it is you will actually be able to expose um, more of what the Democrats are actually up to. Like, they argue why do we have open borders or why allow people to come there? I think the big thing Trump will probably expose is because this is the bonus. The the Democrats don't want illegal immigrants to ever get the right to vote. They just don't want that to happen. And the reason why they don't is they always want to use that as a platform to say, hey, elect us in office and this we're going to work on that. Is it not amazing that you have all these Democrats argue how they're going to make all these changes and help out minorities and stuff, but when they control the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, they don't even try to even bring up one single promise they made during the election cycle. Not one single promise even gets even put up to debate for a law change to actually help people. Why is that?
Now, I don't know if I understood you correctly. You're saying that the Democrats really don't want illegal immigrants to get the vote?
Well, no. I mean, look at it. They used to always tell you about how great it was to let illegal immigrants into the country as long as they were going into Texas and Florida. As soon as Florida and Texas started sending them to New York and Michigan, all that stuff, now you actually have Democrats in Congress who used to argue for immigration, saying we've got to shut the border down. Think about that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's straining their resources and their budgets, granted, but if they get the vote, isn't the plan among the Democrats to bring in massive amounts of new Democratic voters to keep them in power?
I don't think so. Maybe down the road, but right now it's a great platform for them to run on so that the immigrants that have come here and become voting citizens to get them to actually vote. But here's kind of the weird thing. And I've actually interviewed several immigrants who have come here and actually become U.S. citizens that came from Mexico or Venezuela or something. This is so interesting. Once they get the right to vote, they don't vote Democrat, they vote Republican. And think about that for a second. If you look at the Latin American culture, what's the Latin American culture about? They're predominantly Catholic. They don't like abortion. They like free enterprise. They like because they come from countries that are primarily socialist or dictatorships. They don't want to see socialism. So once they have the right to vote, they vote Republican. Why would the Democrats want to give a party that has more in common with the Republican Party's base that to give them the power to vote? Why would they do that? Think about that for a second.
So
Think
you're
about the Latin American culture and compare that to the Republican platform, the Democrat platform. Which one are they more aligned with?
so what you're saying is it's a miscalculation on the part of the Democrats if that was the original plan to turn them into Democratic voters.
They won't. I mean, I have a friend who came here illegally, actually became a legitimate voting citizen, And he told me, he said, before he became a voted Republican, he used to always support the Democratic Congress people because they promised to give him the make him a legal citizen. The second he became a legal citizen, he was like, "Oh no, I don't want these people coming in here. I know these are the people I try to get away from. I don't want those people coming into my country. I'm voting Republican."
All right, so Mark, your overall assessment then is that if Trump regains the White House, try as he may, he's not going to be able to change things within his term, but you're saying 10, 15 years down the road, there will be a change because what Trump will do in a second term is make people more aware of how the entrenched deep state established politicians work and what they're actually doing to the country behind the scenes.
For what he'll really do is he'll expose the deep state a lot more than what the deep state wants to be exposed. He might be able to do something with immigration simply because there's so many Democrats that have changed their tune in the last 4 years that they actually want to shut down the border now because primary reason is they're like, in New York, you have politicians who used to support immigration that don't want to support immigration anymore because the New York budget just cannot support it. So they
Right.
have taken the fight. They have got Democrats that did not have to deal with this problem now are having to deal with this problem. And those Democrats in New York don't like having these people shipped up there to them.
All right, Mark, you're a financial advisor. Wrapping this up now, uh, what would you say to people that have investments, retirement accounts, and all that? What should they do in anticipation of the election?
Well, election years are historically very strong for being up years. So it's very, very rare. I think in the last, 100 years, we've only seen two election years that be negative. One of them was during the Great Depression, and of course, the other one was 2008, which was an election year. But now, with that being said, even though it's very, very rare to see election years down, it's also very, very rare to see election years have big up years. I mean, you hardly ever see an election year up 20%. I mean, the historical average is between 8 and 12%. So if you're investing in the stock market this year, your best bet you're really going to have to be a stock picker's market. If you want to do better than 8 to 10%, you've got to focus on picking the right stocks, not sitting back focusing on picking the indexes or stuff like that, because you're just going to be stuck with an 8 to 12% return.
Should you stay in the stock market or should you go to cash and put it under your mattress?
I would say be in the stock market for the simple reason election years are historically up. And then two, usually bear markets, usually only the majority of your bear markets occur in the first 2 years of a new presidential term.
All right, Mark Collinsworth, the CIO, the Chief Investment Officer of Vere Global Wealth Management. Thanks once again for being with us and for the look ahead, what's going to be facing us in this election year. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome, Larry. And as always, it's always the darkest before it gets really freaking down.
An optimistic note from Mark, as usual, closing remarks. See you later.
Have a good night.